Hello and welcome to A Spirited Debate. I'm Lauren Green. After the Paris attacks and the San Bernardino shootings, many Muslims took to Twitter and social media condemning the attacks, but many say condemning the attacks is not enough. Now a group of moderate Muslims are fighting back to take control of the narrative of Islam to defeat the terrorist rhetoric that continues to metastasize. Dr. Jasser convened a group of Muslim reformers last week in D.C. for a summit for the purpose of pushing back against extremist ideology. And Dr. Jasser joins me now. Welcome, Dr. Jasser.
It's great to be with you, Lauren. Thanks so much for having me.
You know, at the summit, you and about 20 Muslim reformers created a new declaration that will be distributed to mosques around the country. What is the gist of that document?
The gist of it, Lauren, is that this is a firewall. For those who want to know Muslims that are part of the solution, they're ones that believe in these principles. We divide it into 3 areas with 9 main points. One is regarding governance, secular governance. We are supporting the UN Declaration of Human Rights. We believe in the separation of mosque and state. We reject any Islamic state and we reject the caliphate. The second section is on human rights. We accept the equality of men and women. We reject blasphemy laws and any apostasy laws. We believe ideas do not have rights, but human beings have rights. And the third section is about policy and counterterrorism policy. And ultimately, in that policy, we believe that Americans should embrace Muslims that reject violent jihad. And ultimately, we reject any type of politicization of our religion and need to separate mosque and state. And what we want to do is, and we did this in Washington with the Saudi-related mosque on Mass Avenue, we want to take that declaration and showcase that declaration by Muslims and non-Muslims can be taken to Muslim leaders and say, do you accept these principles? If you do, you're part of the reforms that can happen to stop the root cause of radicalization. If you reject them, then those mosques and leaders are actually part of the radicalization problem.
You know, you talk about the root cause, and the group also said that there is a problem within the House of Islam. What is that problem?
This problem is those who do not believe in Western modernity, do not believe in the equality of men and women, do not believe that every individual is created equal under God and may choose to be an atheist, may choose to be any faith. So you look at systems like Saudi Arabia, Iran, you can't say that we simply condemn ISIS. ISIS is a byproduct of the ideology spread by the Wahhabis, by the Khomeinis, by the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. These are huge movements, Lauren, and we in the Muslim community accept the fact that, those of us that are honest, accept the fact that Islam has not gone through what Christianity went through, which was the separation of church and state, and ultimately we are where our founding fathers were in the 18th century, and it's incumbent upon Muslims to say, you know what, the time for words and empty condemnations is over. It's time to act, march to the mosques, and engage our leadership and demand that the clerics come to terms with modernity.
Now, one of the speakers put a lot of the blame on liberal media, that they were kind of complicit in this. What have they done?
Well, it's amazing. They claim they're trying to protect us Muslims from bigotry, but ultimately I think there's nothing more bigoted than accepting the fact that the current dominant narrative globally, which is theocrats, the Saudis, the Iranians, basically can determine who speaks for Islam. So ultimately, I think it is bigoted to say that we Muslims deserve to be under the boots of theocrats everywhere. And the current Muslim leadership in America is all about grievance narratives, about we being the victims. I mean, you even had, Lauren, a few days ago, the Council on American Islamic Relations blaming American foreign policy. I mean, that is the ISIS narrative. You're witnessing the narrative of the radicalization of Muslims as America being the problem, rather than America's laboratory of freedom being the solution, and that we have a responsibility to own it as Muslims. These groups don't want to own it, and the media is complicit in that by not demanding that we own it as Muslims.
Okay, one last question. President Obama spoke last night, reiterated that we are not at war with Islam, that kind of rhetoric fuels extremists. What do you say?
I say ultimately, it's interesting that he was saying this is not Islam, almost as if he's the theologian in chief. This is a battle within the House of Islam. And if you want to engage reformers, don't give us a pass. Let us realize the urgency. The Muslims in Egypt realized the urgency, and millions went to the street to protest the Muslim Brotherhood because they realized the theocrats were destroying their government and their society. In America, because we're only 1% of the population, the Muslims don't really see an urgency. But, as our summit proved, we could write this declaration that could not be done in authoritarian autocracies in the Middle East, because those voices of reform are imprisoned, they're in jail. Our so-called allies are actually suppressing the reforms necessary because they're flogging and abusing those Muslims that want to reform. So we have a responsibility to do it here. President Obama, by wanting to put on blinders, it's interesting, he also had this cognitive dissonance, Lauren, where he said, well, it's not Islam, it's not Muslims, but you know what? It's coming from the Muslim community and they need to work on it. So which is it? We either demand that they work on it and call it Islamic, or we give them a pass and let the theocrats dominate our society.
All right, Dr. Jasser, I want to thank you so much. Wonderful words of wisdom. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lauren. I'd ask people to go to change.org and sign our petition and take it to their local communities and demand that the Muslims in their communities look at those principles.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You want to check out foxnews.com for more on this developing story. I'm Lauren Green, and thanks for watching.